Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 16th installment of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links Best Deck series. Today I'm going to be showing you a Gate Guardian deck which uses the Elements Unite ability with the Paradox Brothers, along with a bunch of cards that work when you have a very low card count in your hand. Just before the video starts, I'm just going to say this deck isn't going to be a competitive deck really. It's not weak, but it's not exactly the strongest deck possible at the moment. So if you're looking to climb ranks or play seriously, I wouldn't play this deck. It's just really for fun to show it how good this ability can actually be, and really make a deck that's viable that uses this ability. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so the best character for this deck, and the only character for this deck, is the Paradox Brothers. And the only skill for this deck is Elements Unite. You will start the duel with 500 life points, and your starting hand will be one card, which is Gate Guardian. In addition, you will start the duel with Sanga of the Thunder, Keijin, and Sujin on your side of the field. Their effects are negated and they cannot attack as long as they are face up on the field. So rather than me explaining any more about this ability, I've pretty much just said exactly what it is right there, but if you don't really understand what it is, there's gameplay at the end of the video which will show this deck in action and will show this ability at the start of the game. Basically, you start the game with the 3 god whatever they are monsters on the board, except their effects are negated and you cannot attack with them. Pretty much the game wants you to just simply special summon Gate Guardian from your hand. The best part about the skill is, it means you'll have no cards in your hand, which is why this deck has the certain synergy it has. There's not much else for me to say about this ability, just watch the gameplay at the end if you understand how it works. Alright, so let's move on to the deck list. This deck runs 1 Swiftguy the Fierce Knight, 3 Flash of Silence, 3 The Band Nightmares, 2 An Owl of Luck, 3 Gateway to Chaos, 3 Champion's Vigilance, 3 Ryoko Field, 2 Enemy Controllers, and then side cards, which are the cards that you start off the game with thanks to the ability. There's Gate Guardian, Sujin, Sanga, and Keijin. Sujin, Sanga, and Keijin obviously will not be able to use any of their abilities or able to attack. So the only card that I'm really going to talk about from the deck list perspective is the Enemy Controllers. Because I'm not really... every other card in this deck I'm pretty sure is needed. The Ryoko fields can be replaced with other negate cards, but I think they are particularly the best choice other than Champion's Vigilance. But the enemy controllers I'm not really sure about in this deck, so you can probably swap them over with just about anything. Sphere Karibos, the Windstorm of Atakwa, pretty much anything, so I'm not really sure if they really fit in the deck. It's mostly the other cards that I'm really sure about of this deck. Alright, now I'm going to talk about the strategy behind the deck. So pretty much, you start off the game with your 3 starting monsters on the board, you special summon your Gate Guardian, and then on turn 1 you'll have 0 cards in your hand. And then from that point on, every card you draw you're going to play. So from now on, every card you draw will be either one of 2 things. 1, a negate effect to protect your Gate Guardian, or 2, a monster card that will synergize with having no cards in your hand. The only kind of exception to this is An Owl of Luck and Gateway to Chaos. Both of these are used to get Swiftguy the Fierce Knight out of your deck and into your hand. What An Owl of Luck does is, when it's flipped, it draws 1 field spell from your deck and places it at the top of your deck. So this is really good for this deck, because as soon as you flip it, you get Gateway to Chaos, put it on the top of your deck, and what Gateway to Chaos does is when you play it, it draws Gaia to your hand. And what Gaia's ability is, if you don't have any cards in your hand, you can summon him without tributing, which is exactly what you'll have. So there's not really much else to say about the strategy. It's fairly simple, fairly self-explanatory. Only 2 outcomes can happen at the start of each duel, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Or if you don't really understand how the strategy works yet, just watch the end of the video. There should be gameplay there to show you how the deck works and how the ability looks. Alright, now I'll go through each of the monster cards individually and each of the spells individually, so you understand a bit more about why each of the cards in the deck and how each of them work. Alright, so the monster cards in this deck are Gate Guardian, Flash of Silent, The Band Nightmare, Swift Gaia the Fierce Knight, and an Owl of Luck. So obviously Gate Guardian is the card you start off with in your starting hand, and as soon as you start off with it, you're going to special summon it turn 1, every time. This is pretty much essential, as this is how you get 0 cards in your hand, which is what all the other monsters in the deck are synergized with. Generally, putting Gate Guardian on the board turn 1 wouldn't even be bad anyway, as he's a fairly high status minion for a turn 1 play. Flash of Silent is in this deck because, once again, it synergizes with lack of cards in your hand. Decrease the attack and defense of this card by 400 points for each card in your hand. So, this card, its effect will not happen. You'll just have 2000 attack, 2000 defense, because you'll have 0 cards in your hand. So playing this, turn 1 will mean you'll have a 3750 attack monster and a 2000 attack monster on turn 1, which is pretty insane, pretty nutty. Fairly similar to Flash of Silent is the Banned Nightmare, which is while you have no cards in your hand or spells in your spell and trap card zone, you will gain 1500 attack on top of his already 1500 attack, giving you a 3000 attack minion on turn 1 to go with your 3750 attack minion, which is also pretty insane. The only difference here with this card is it actually has a pretty strong weakness, and that it has 500 defense, so if it gets enemy controlled or Sphere Kariboed, it's pretty screwed. So I prefer a Flash of Silence, but it's still a pretty strong card, especially with how this deck works. The next card is Swift Gaia the Fierce Knight. This card is kind of what half the deck is run around, as it has a fairly strong effect and it's fairly powerfully statted. Simply, if you have no cards in your hand, you can normal summon it without tribute summoning. So once again, on turn 1 you can have a 2300 attack monster and your 3750 monster, which is really strong. And most of the time this will be the monster you'll get to use, as it's kind of what half the deck is built around. The last card in the deck is an Owl of Luck. This card is simply used to get your Gateway to Chaos out of your deck and placed on the top of your deck. So most of the time, you'll play this card face down, your opponent will attack it, you'll flip it, and you'll place your Gateway to Chaos on top of your deck, which means on your turn, you'll draw it and be able to summon Gaia. The only real issue with this is if your opponent doesn't attack into it, you're gonna have to wait a turn to play Gaia, as it only places the card on top of your deck and not into your hand, which isn't actually a bad thing, because if it places it into your hand, you wouldn't be able to play Gaia anyway, because then you'd draw another card and you'd have 2 cards in your hand anyway. So it's not bad that it does this, it's just a little slow compared to if you just draw a Flash of Silent or the Banned Nightmare, for example. Alright, now I'll talk about the spells and traps in this deck. The spells and traps in this deck are Gateway to Chaos, Champion's Vigilance, Ryoko Field, and Enemy Controller. So Gateway to Chaos is simply in this deck to bring Gaia to your hand. It has a bunch of text in the description of the card. Don't worry about any of that. All you need to know is when you play this card, you'll get Gaia from your deck and place it in your hand. This is the card that's targeted with an Owl of Luck, and is pretty much the only kind of combo that is part of this deck, so it's the only complicated part. Champion's Vigilance and Ryoko Field are both negate spells that are used to defend your Gate Guardian. Champion's Vigilance is obviously a lot stronger than Ryoko Field, and I'm still not 100% sure that Ryoko Field is the best negate spell available, as it only works on spells, as opposed to Champion's Vigilance, for example, that works on spells, traps, even monsters, for example. So if you are going to replace a card in the deck, Ryoko Field is also probably a good one to replace, as there's probably more suitable negate spells out there. I'm not sure if this one is the best one, but at the moment I would stick with it if you don't know any other negate spells that you think are better. Keep in mind that Champion's Vigilance isn't only used to defend Gate Guardian, it can be used to defend any of your monsters as long as either Gate Guardian or Gaia the Fierce Knight is on the board, as it does require a level 7 or higher monster to be on the board before it can be used on your side of the board. The last spell card in this deck is Enemy Controller. This card is obviously very popular, This card has a few uses in the deck. The main one is, again, to defend your Gate Guardian. Your opponent can swing at you, you can activate your enemy controller, turn it to defense position, therefore negating the attack. It also has the added bonus of you can tribute a monster, target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and take control of that monster. This can sometimes give you kind of a quick lethal at the end if they have some kind of heavy defense monster face up. You can tribute whatever monster you have, take control of theirs, swing with your Gate Guardian and that monster, and kill your opponent in one turn. Like I said at the start, I'm not really sure if Enemy Controller is the perfect card for the deck. There's just 2 more slots at the end and I wasn't really sure what card to fill them out with, so I kind of put an Enemy Controller as it's like a really strong card anyway. So you can probably replace this card with anything like a Mirror Wall or Sphere Karibos, Windstorm of Attackers. There's a bunch of cards you could probably play as Enemy Controller with. Maybe even a few like D-spells or other spell destruction cards or trap destruction cards. Pretty much whatever you like. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you don't understand anything, please feel free to leave a comment. Also, at the end of this video I will have gameplay of this deck in action, so feel free to stay around for that. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Our teamwork is second to none. You should have stayed in the kiddie pool. Win and escape? Ha! Never! Be lost in our labyrinth forever. Prepare to sleep with the fishes. Duel! It's my turn. I end my turn. My turn. I draw. I set a monster. I set a card face down. My turn is complete. Prepare yourself. It's my turn. I draw. Elements of thunder, water, and wind. Sangha, Suijin, Kazijin, begin. Melt your powers in eternal light. Show these fools your unstoppable might. Gate Guardian! Summon a monster in attack position. Battle! Now! Time to attack! Gate Guardian, unleash your fury! Thunderstroke! How could I be so careless? I shall turn the tides. Here's my face down card. My trap activates. I end my turn. What shall I do? It's my turn. I draw. I set a monster. I end my turn. Here we go. It's my turn. I draw. Very well. I summon a monster in attack position. Battle. Now. Time to attack. You are eliminated. My monster attacks you directly! I have been defeated! This duel we did win. Notify your next of kin.